I know the drill.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Psychic Kitchen. We have Tanya with Adventures for Connection. How's everyone doing today? We have the Psychic Kitchen. Find us on Spotify, Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook.
Beautiful.
Hey, Tanya.
Beautiful.
Thank you for being here. How you doing?
I'm excellent. We just had almost 2 weeks of sunshine here in North Vancouver in the middle of winter, which I think really, really was a beautiful opportunity given the current energies that are going on. It was like, just going to go out in the sun, right? So it was really nice because normally, as we live in a rainforest, we get a lot of rain in the winter. And so it's been a really nice break, but today's overcast. But that's okay. Yeah.
All right.
Sun
And
codes.
do you want to just remind us about Adventures for Connection, how you started, just to sort of get us a little introduction about sort of who you are and where you come from?
Absolutely. Well, it goes back quite a ways. So probably about 11 or 12 years ago now, I started doing some personal development work because I was the common denominator in my life for everything that I thought was going wrong externally around me. And in hiring someone to assist with the business, I got to work with a master coach, and he just said, I kept saying, I'm just so busy. And I was like spinning, right? Trying to control everything within this business. And he just said, oh, you're such a powerful manifester. Everything you say, your brain's just giving you what you're asking for. And it was like, I need to retrain my brain. And so that took me down Mind Valley, and I became actually a part-time master certified trainer with Mind Valley for a while, and hosted seminars and would put everyone in a circle because I didn't like the model of like, look, I'm on a stage and I'm talking down to you. Like that's part of that, top-down programming per se. And so I put everyone in a circle, and then they wanted us to speak about specific things and to say it this way. And I went, yeah, I can't do that. I'm out. And so I created Adventures for Connection because that's really what people are looking for in life. And so we do things like host locally, like I go to a sound bath here and deal with that. But we do things like we've gone to Egypt, so Vedette Lake here in BC, local circles within the North Vancouver area. And more of those are coming online right now or in person because people are really seeking that. And everybody was coming to the Mind Valley events looking for connection. They didn't care about the content. They already knew the content. So I couldn't, in good faith, not give them what they needed, right? And so, and we've got Egypt and Greece coming up this year. And then we have an online membership community to get everyone really connected. And even within the online community and going to Egypt in September, we're going to have like a 9-month lead into that so that people know each other beforehand. Because I find you go to a retreat and it's like this 1-week thing and then it's done. And I've got Sedona coming up in April. I'm going to pop down to Sedona with just a few souls. That one's kind of been like invite only. So if somebody's interested, certainly reach out. We're going to go from the 10th to the 15th and go do some hiking and feel the energies and just get really into our bodies. And I'm the one I'm just guiding people to themselves. I don't want anyone to put me on a pedestal. I don't want anyone to think that, I know. I just have my experiences and we're all just sharing our experiences and what we know. And our mission is to empower souls to really find their authentic selves, to stand in their authenticity.
Awesome. So on that note, how do you feel with what's going on at the minute? We were talking a little bit before we come on. How do you we might as well get straight into it. So
absolutely.
From sort of
there's a lot of from an energetic standpoint. And so I'm one of those people that just knows things. And I know that whatever you consume with your eyes, your ears, and your mouth is what is creating your reality and your avatar, your body per se. And so if you're watching the news nonstop and you're a keyboard warrior online, it's got to be a pretty tough spot right now to be. fighting for your political party, possibly, or what's going on in the world. It's always most chaotic before change. And I actually, I welcome chaos. I'm like, great, let's go. Because you can't have one without the other. And so the bigger the transformation coming in, the more chaotic it may feel, right? The more dysregulating it actually may be on the body. But what can you do and what can you control? So take it back to the minutia and close off your external information and just focus on you for a bit and see if you can adjust yourself so that you feel better. Yeah.
Hmm.
I feel so many people are just feeding into these things. It's like a gestalt of energy. It keeps feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding. I mean, what I see in the world, it's hot take, but I mean, it's almost like we're going to talk about Trump. It's almost like an order of chaos. Well, and from my understanding from reading old fantasy books, you have order, like you have order and chaos. You can say you have order mages and chaos mages and neutral mages. It's going to use that analogy.
Okay.
But it's like chaos precedes order. So like all these people, when this happened last election too, I remember, is that when things started changing, people just started flipping out. But the world has to change. And whether it's P. Diddy or any of these other things that have been exposed, like when they get exposed at first, people are like, how is this not reality? When these things have been reported on different levels for like 30, 40 years. And it's like, well, there has to be a change. And people don't like that change because it's like with politics, you give them two options and they think it's like a sports team. You give them two options and they root for one because people inherently follow a form of tribalism over and over again. So what does that precede and what does that lead into? Instead of just stepping back objectively and looking what's happening, instead of reacting. I've seen people do entire petitions online with thousands of signatures. I'm like, it's not going to do anything. It's not, you could sign everything you want. And I'm like, if you guys are so upset, I'm going to be a little crazy here. Get on the fucking street and do something about
it. Yeah, there's division is strong. And isn't that always a form of control too? So even why did we have all the rings with the fighting in them, the Colosseums, right? And so that all started, give them something to watch, right?
Yeah.
And let them be divisive within themselves, rooting for one or the other. It's the same with sports teams, political, instead of just accepting, that's interesting, that's happening out there right now. It's out of my control. I don't perceive it in my immediate reality unless I'm viewing it on a screen. And how much is that more real than what I should be focused on for self? Yeah. Yeah. It's like the hero's journey too, right? It's like you can't have light without darkness. Like it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's so many aspects of
that. That's quite interesting because I've heard that said quite a lot. That you can't have light without darkness and dark without light. Why?
Because if it was always light, you would never sleep. We'd always be activated, right? Like let's take nature, for example. We need that balance, right? To operate in this world. We need to rest. So would many of us would not rest, or we'd all be resting at different times, right? The plants would be very confused. They would probably be dried out, right? So everything has this ebb and flow to be more in harmony and balance, kind of like the masculine and feminine.
So it's a physical thing that we need.
It's physical and mental. So if the moon is emotions, and then we consider the sun to be more about the fire and the moon to be more about water and emotions, we could look at those two, right? There's always alchemy going on. And nothing changes because the sun is always out, well, that's a really different world. That sounds like a full-time desert to me, 24 hours a day. So I don't know anything that could survive in that. And so in having these opportunity to rest and reset and to feel our emotions, our energy and motion, to me, I watch the moon cycle and you go through specific phases with the moon emotionally, which is clearing things for you because everything needs to be moving. If something isn't moving, it becomes stagnant. If it gets stagnant, then we have disease.
So that just applies in the 3D realm, in the because does it in the different realms, in different dimensions. Is there light and dark, or is there just light, or is there just dark, or is there both?
I don't know. I'm not in those dimensions right now.
Well, I can
There
tell
should be
you.
many a play, Thomas.
Yeah, okay. So in the upper dimensions, like in the ninth at least, there is there because everyone's like the higher you get in vibration,
The more light.
the more light. But I've encountered what you would call negative entities in higher dimensions too. So that's the thing is like, and then they're like, well, if you get into higher, it's this. But sometimes the more light that's cast, the more things can be cast as well.
Mhm.
So that's
There's
kind of the key here. So when you're when you're looking at it, you're like, okay, well, and it's like the yin and the yang, as you said, the masculine and feminine, but it's also the light and the dark. We're all made up of these energies. And even if you're in a relationship with a person, a romantic, whatever, you can be triggered by things and you can be like, well, that's dark, but that could also be light coming in to show you something about yourself. So it's all in perception. Because I really like to hit people sometimes with comments with that word perception. It's an interesting perception. That triggers the fuck out of people. But the thing is, it is a perception. It's all it really is a perception. And what it's even like the demon or the archon or whatever entity or energy sometimes plays a purpose in a lesson. Not always, but sometimes. It's up to the person what they do with that situation. I just like to remove the stuff. But the point of it, I like to fight sometimes. But the point of it is that it's like, what is it showing you? Why is it I can go to one place and live in Louisiana or South Carolina and it's very dark? But I see the people there and I see that they could totally change their lives, but they're locked into a perception of what their reality is. But if they tweaked a few little things, their entire life would shift.
Mhm.
And that's what I would do. I'd be like, just tweak this and tweak this and tweak this. And what I found a lot of times is no one would listen to me unless they were paying me. But a couple people would listen to me. And they start tweaking a few little things and they start seeing like progress and like, oh. And then they would start shifting their viewpoint and things would start shifting in their lives.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Do you think? Sorry. Do you think that people? Because I've had this discussion with someone before. Do you think people are inherently good, or do they inherently want to do good? They're inherently kind, or do you think it's a learned sort of behavior to be to do bad things? Shall we say? I know there's a perception of what's good and bad, but let's take the sort of the natural.
All right. This has been on topic recently. So I can only speak from my perspective on this, is that as souls having this human experience, we've played all roles. And to the universe, and correct me if I'm wrong, there to God, there is no good or bad, there just is. Because everything is just energy in motion, and it gives polarity so that we may have different experiences. If it was all love and light down here 247 full time, well, that would get very boring. Right? We may not think that right now from our perspective in this moment, because we're kind of, we could use a little of that right now. But on average, as souls, if you haven't had anything, you have both perspectives. And this is what is so interesting as I tap into previous lifetimes for others and myself. It was like, oh yeah, I was that was nasty. But I don't judge it because it just is. And so I'm able to have that perspective. We don't know what somebody's been through to make them do the things they do, but it must be part of their original programming as they come into this life. So what was done to them? What did they experience? Because we all have one perspective, which is our own, which is what's so cool about this. So even somebody that murders other people, they must believe, oh, it's okay to murder people because of this, this, or this. So I can honor that I can't be in their position fully, but I can honor it in that I don't have their perspective. I don't know what they went through, but I can understand that if somebody was witnessed murders when they were young or were highly abused and traumatized, that they thought it was okay to take a life or okay to abuse children. Now, I'm not condoning it at all, but I can see how that would be a perspective. And so in being able to see that perspective or someone else, I can't judge it because it's not me, it's not my perspective. And so as we go through this, it creates more soul expansion to have compassion. Compassion for a soul, no matter where they're at, no matter where they've been, no matter what they've been through. For if someone can be felt, seen, and heard, then that lets them feel safer and maybe open up a little more. So we just have this ability right now to be more compassionate. Doesn't mean you go into empathy and try and rescue people. No, focus on yourself and just know that judgment is the hardest. I find judgment is one of the hardest ones for those to overcome or to feel like you're being shamed. Jay doesn't want to go to the dentist because I don't want to be shamed and judged. I'm like, okay, we'll talk about that. That's my daughter. So there's just many perspectives. Thomas, you deal with all kinds of stuff around this.
I think it's, even if I had a lifetime as an Aztec, so we would sacrifice people to the gods. Now that was seen as normal. So it's like cutting off people's heads, whatever, into rivers and waterfalls. I find it comical. But the point is that was just normal. That was okay. That was good. But it comes down to what that reality is. I mean, if you were riding with Genghis Khan and you were on that side for 500 years and you destroyed a third of the world's population and pillaged and did all kinds of things to people, like, would you consider that bad? It's like, what side are you on? So it's like, what's the perspective in that moment of what's happening?
Yeah.
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 I guess that does. Sorry, go on, Tony. No, you go.
I was going to say, similar to Sekhmet, when I was in Egypt and tapping into Sekhmet and that energy and spending time sitting in with the statue. And, you know, the story is, so to speak, that she was not only the destroyer of life, but also a giver of life and very nurturing. And I was shown she would wipe out, like entire populations could be wiped out, but they were suffering so badly that releasing them and letting them go back to source, so to speak, or back to unconditional love was a gift, right? It is nurturing. That is a loving move. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a different perspective, isn't it? So
it's like rebirth, isn't it? Basically. Carolyn says personality and awareness of self have a lot to do with perception. Jan, she can see others' perspectives. Don't let them hurt you just because they had terrible things happen to them.
Still keep your boundaries. Absolutely. It doesn't mean you have to like them or hang out with them, but it just means that you can have some compassion for where they're at. Yeah.
Well, people show you who they are, and it's up to the person whether they can, that's a good or a bad thing for them. I mean, some people are cool with different people. That's just reality. But when someone shows you who they are, it's like, believe them.
Yeah.
Because they're going to repeat those same cycles. It's just up to you, without channeling a little bit, without judgment, to accept if you can allow that into your reality.
Do you find that I know I have the more that happens and you see someone shows themselves who they are and you think, well, yeah, I don't want to be associated with them anymore. Do you find that the time that it takes you to realize that and then act on it decreases the more it happens because you're less willing to accept, because you start off and you know, when you're young and sort of people do things and you think, well, yeah, and then it gradually decreases the time that you're willing to allow them to sort of give them grace, shall we say.
I would say put up with their bullshit, but sure. You can do it with grace, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mm.
yeah, absolutely. And somebody, everything, I keep getting everything's energy. And when you can recognize when you have energy and motion within you, what is the energy outside of you giving you because you're having this reaction to it? Oh, I
Mm.
know this one. Oh,
Mm.
because if you pay attention to yourself and how you're feeling about something, it's a really
Mm.
good guidance tool. Right? You
Mm.
can walk into a store and oh, I don't like this store. Something's going on in here. I don't want to be in here. Right? Or a
Mm.
restaurant or a room. So it's really getting to trust yourself so that you can read your own emotions better. Your body's always telling you, your skin's picking up information before your brain ever senses it. It's quite
Mm.
profound. Yeah.
Could there be an argument, a point that says, whatever you think of someone else is what you think of yourself?
Mhm. Whatever you judge in someone else is something you need to look out for yourself. Why do you
Mm.
judge them?
Mm. Because I saw something the other day where someone demonstrated that basically he asked them to say that they were someone else, not them, and they didn't. But or he called them another name that wasn't them, and they didn't react because they thought, "Well, I'm not that," so they didn't react. And then he called them something else, like they were stupid or something like that, and they did react. And so he says that there's a part of them that recognizes that they think they're stupid and they don't like that, which is why they reacted. And I thought, well, that's a good example.
Absolutely. So if somebody's making you angry, if somebody's pissing you off, if somebody's making you sad, I can't be responsible for other people's reactions to me. I mean, don't be harmful and hurtful, but I can be
Mm.
responsible for my own feelings about somebody else, right? So when we blame
Mm.
someone else, we're playing the victim. I blame Trump.
Mm.
Trump's all he's the one. He's doing all this to make me feel this way. How dare he? Well,
Mm.
what within you is allowing you to feel that way, right?
Mm.
People aren't willing to look at themselves. They're not
Mm.
willing to take off the masks that they've been putting on since childhood, through school, through education. They're all
Mm.
wearing masks. And right now, there's a lot. This is part of this chaos. They don't know how to
Mm.
feel. They're like vibrating like this, and they're having blow ups, and because the energy's got to move in some way. But when you
Mm.
become more authentic to yourself and to others, and there's a whole new world that opens up. It's quite
Mm.
beautiful.
Yeah. So could it be said that we never do anything to ourselves that we don't allow?
We never do anything to us. Absolutely. Yeah.
Or nothing ever happens to us that we don't at least allow on some
So,
level? Because I
in
mean,
some way.
let's face it, we don't necessarily, from our perspective that we have, we can't necessarily, or maybe that's a limiting belief, I don't know, but we can't necessarily be aware of everything that's going on everywhere at all times. Because obviously we can maybe on different levels, but maybe not in our
Yeah.
consciousness.
Yeah.
That's just a question that I've often pondered.
I mean, what I've seen, Jimmy, is that even with different, obviously we get older, we go through different relationships with different people. But I think we touched on this earlier, but the more you get triggered by something, or you see the same things over and over again in different people. So it's up to you whether you allow that to keep happening, if you react to it, or if you just, of course, you may react, but then at least with me, it's like the reflection of that reaction starts to say, does this even matter?
Mm.
And then you push it away. You're like, I don't want that. That doesn't align with me anymore. So,
And
yeah.
Actually, Denise has got a question that's on that topic. Actually, I'll put it on the screen so you can see it, but I'll read it as well for those who are listening. It says, "I have a question, if that's okay. When we have been abandoned by all those you loved and forgiven them unconditionally, truly, is it okay to not want them back in your life, to block them out with love?"
Absolutely. If they're not, and I can only speak from my perspective, if that was me. I mean, there's certain people that I just don't communicate with. And forgiving them unconditionally is about forgiving yourself, really, right? Because forgiving how they made you feel. And so it doesn't have anything really to do with them. But if they continue to show who they are, that's a boundary to say, I'm done. We don't need this anymore. We don't often we come into a lineage that needs cleaning, right? We're the circuit breakers. We come into like, no more, this is done. So we're cleaning up the lineage, who shows up as family and where they're at trauma wise or where they're at in their life can really be out of our control, obviously. And so control what you can, but I wouldn't if that's totally okay. As long as it makes you feel good. Don't feel guilty about it now.
Yeah, interesting. And kind of sort of segueing a little bit, the subject of revenge, because I see things, especially currently with things that are coming out with regards to the jabs and stuff like that, and how people want revenge and want people to pay for all of the things that were done and the information that was, the misinformation and everything like that. A lot of people are wanting revenge, but does revenge, and I guess it depends on whether we so if someone feels like being a victim is a good or a bad thing, but is wanting revenge basically advertising the fact that you're a victim and you have no control over your own life? And is wanting revenge kind of perpetuating whatever it is that you want revenge for as well at the same time? Sorry, it's a bit of a layered question, but
it's a layered question. It's a very valid one. It goes back almost to the judgment as well, right? If that's external things that really aren't in your control, and if we all believe that we're souls having this human experience and it's just part of the show per se, the less we give energy to the external, the more we stand in our power, the sooner that goes away. The sooner it'll dissipate because it's not being given energy anymore. And so and then I always say, so tell me the last time you bought something new and you were so excited and you bought it, and within a week or two, you're like, oh, well, that doesn't give me that dopamine hit anymore. So this judgment, this revenge thing that people want to see justice is part of it's same to me. It's a similar play that, oh, you're going to feel so justified and righteous around it. Well, what happens after that? You're still going to be you. So, you know, if you're waiting for that justice to be like the shiny new car, right? When that happens, I'm going to feel great. I'm going to be justified. But how does it leave you feeling at the end? It leaves you right back where you were. So what can you control and what can you do? Yeah.
Yeah, you sort of become the thing that you hate, haven't you? By
Right?
seeking revenge. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of, yeah. Because I mean, if everyone sought revenge for things, then it would just be a perpetual cycle. It would just go on forever. And if it was, you know, if someone murdered someone and they wanted revenge for it, then eventually there'd be no one left.
Right.
And so, basically.
I'll take the adventure game, please, over the murdering game. I want that one. I always like the whole experience too, like an adventure game. And I played Zelda when I was in my teens. That had just come out, and it was like my favorite game because it was adventurous. You go over here, you could do this. Like, it's a great example of how to control your reality. If you feel so much resistance where you're going, stop, pause. Oh, let's look around and see what other options might there be. So when you can be in more of that flow state that does make you feel good, I'm not going to say you're not going to have some resistance in places, but definitely if you're fighting, to me that's resistance. If I'm going to fight, I'm going to fight, I'm going to fight. I'm like, wow, that's really exhausting. You're fighting something way over there out of your control.
But
You must be
sometimes
exhausted.
they're fighting, they don't even know why they're fighting, based
Yeah.
upon like
It's a
old
programming.
systems of belief or whatever it is from their parents or their past loves or the triggering aspects, but they just keep fighting. And I tend to, when that happens with people and their judgments, because everyone has their own judgments, I tend to just kind of look at it and listen.
Mhm.
Be like, oh, I used to be more reactive, but now I'm like listening, and I'm like, that's I don't even say anything. I'm like, that's interesting. Like, can you get it out? Just keep going, keep going. Because everyone's got their own opinion. It was like I was recently told, my friend doesn't watch this, but he's like, Thomas, you're this or that because you only have this day off a week and it's the only time you can do things. And I'm like, well, I have to work. Like, what do you want me to do? Um, like, I can't change that. It doesn't fit in with your schedule. It's not my problem. Um, but yeah, it's but I'm like accepting he's one of my friends. But the point of it is that I've seen this over and over again, and how they react to it. They tell you you're wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, and I'm like, whatever. Like, I don't even care.
Yeah. We build a lot of resilience doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to have resilience in this world. And, those of us that have lapped this, realm a few times are definitely, I can look at anything and go, and I love that word, that's interesting, because I say it all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not this way, I'm not this way, but wow, that's really fascinating, or that's really interesting that's happening right now. Even with things happening to me, it's like, oh, interesting timing. Absolutely. Yeah.
And how do you view because the victim mentality kind of aspect of things, is there any advantages to having that sort of mindset,
Oh,
would
to
you
playing
say?
the victim?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure, if you've got a rescuer around. So there's a triangle, and so there's the victim, the perpetrator, the one causing
Mm,
it, the attacker, and then there's the rescuer. And
mm,
I think I've played all of them, right? Blaming somebody else, making them, it's your fault, you did it, and they're like, "Oh, she's attacking me. Why is she attacking me?" And then
mm,
being the one to swoop in and say, "Let me help you with that." And so now
mm,
I just sit and I listen to people, and so they can,
mm,
quite often, as humans, and especially females, when we voice something, we don't want it fixed. We just want to be heard and seen, for then our
mm,
hearts connect. And that's the beauty of doing this way now, is like, you can see, like, I was sitting with my girlfriend who doesn't watch this either. She's not even on social media. And she was talking about her dog, and she was talking about the vet. And it was a good little saga story. And she's like, "Oh, I'm playing the victim." She totally caught herself. And it was really interesting to
yeah,
watch her catch herself. And I was like,
yeah,
yeah, I said, but that's, we're so entrenched in it. And so it does
mm,
take being the observer of your words,
mm,
your thoughts, and your actions,
mm,
and waiting to respond instead of reacting. Because in that reaction, your whatever first comes, that's your trigger, right? That's your the point where you feel like you've been wronged. Yeah, that's the judgment point, or the shame point that you have within you. And so it's really
mm,
beautiful when you can catch yourself and go, "Oh, I know this. Okay, I'm
mm,
just gonna be quiet. I gotta go right now." Or right, or change, quite often changing the topic, but just taking radical responsibility for yourself.
mm.
'Cause you're the only one you're responsible for, unless you have kids, and then you're responsible as a guardian of a young soul to help them find themselves. Yeah.
See, in Mayan shamanism, we were taught that is the Dharma triangle. So,
Oh, cool. Let's hear it.
but it was so you have the victim, the perpetrator, and I forget all three of them. But you just take yourself out of it. That's what my former teacher Rossi would say. She's like, everyone's playing one of these three roles. So take yourself out of it, realize what role you're playing, then move yourself out of it and observe it. And then see what you could, because that will change the energy of it. If you
Yeah.
just move yourself out of the three and just
Be
observe
the
it.
observer.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
sometimes what I feel I have to do, because I can be a bit reactionary, but it's harder when it's one-on-one with someone. You're going back and forth, but is that you have to move away from it and kind of think about it and be like, what's going on here? I think of my former fiance, this was a big thing because if we got into it, I'd be like, give me like 15 minutes to think about this. And I would just go into my space and think about it, then come out and be like, oh, like I didn't mean that. I meant it this way. So, and she understood that. So the point of it was that I think as men, we inherently try to fix problems all
Yeah.
the time. And sometimes there isn't a problem to be fixed, or you can't fix it, I'm hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. And women especially just want to be seen and heard. We all want to be seen and heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So having empathy for what they're going through, oh, that sucks. I'm really sorry you're going through that. Is there something that could have been done different? Or how do you feel about it now? And how would you like to move forward on that? Because often when we say things out loud, we suddenly hear them differently ourselves.
Yeah.
Mm.
When it's going around in the brain, right? It's good to express it so you can hear it a new way and release that energy. And maybe it's writing it out. Maybe it's burning it afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So it's, there's different ways of moving the energy. But yeah, to be seen and heard as a human, yeah, we need it as humans. As humans, as we were talking before, Jimmy, all humans. Think about a baby. There's not a baby in the world that comes in going, yeah, I'm a murderer. Babies are just babies. They're pure love. They just are. Yeah.
That was another thing. I was having a conversation with someone a while ago, and saying that children, because kids lie, and my argument was they're not inherently liars. They obviously pick it up from their parents because they see their parents lying, or they see society lying, or they feel like they're going to get in trouble, so they lie because someone else do that, because obviously we teach them. I mean, that being said, I realize that a lot of the kids that come and probably have always come in have an element of wisdom when they came in and are aware of probably more than us, to some degree, especially sort of spiritually. They just may not know how to implement it or articulate it sufficiently. Because I've seen videos of kids, parents who have filmed their kids, and they talk about that they've spoken to the sun, or they've spoken to the moon, or they've spoken to the stars, or whatever. But yeah, do you think that every behavior by a child is learned, or is it inherent, like especially when it comes to sort of doing things sort of that we consider bad, like lying?
I think something like lying is a learned behavior. I think there's certain traits that we would come in with that throughout the DNA as our ancestors, right? So I think about my family lineage on my dad's side, especially. They were all like they were all military. And all I could feel is all this sadness. No wonder they all drank and did drugs and were suffering. Like my grandfather had huge lung issues. Well, that's grief, right? So it's such a sad state. So I I had to work through that, right? So that's a pattern that's more ancestral. Like, I think a lot of people, like I look at Jade. Jade has no interest she had 2 drinks for her 19th birthday and got home and said, "I gotta sit down, I feel dizzy." And I went, "Yes." Whereas me, right? I went hardcore. Let's test this one and see how far I can run with it. So I think some things are ancestral and habitual, but something like lying or cheating, to me, that's a learned behavior from your environment. So a little bit
I
different.
think it's also nature, nature versus nurture. So the Druids
Yes.
would do this. There's tribes in other countries that would do this, and it sounds crazy, but there's one tribe in particular where the shaman takes whoever the next shaman's going to be, and he locks them in a hut for 7 years. But the
Mm,
Druids would do this too. They take them for like 15. They take them away from the parents. They're like, if you give me the child for the first 7 years, I will show you the man.
yeah.
So it's the same basic premise where they have no connection with the outside world except what's going on. And I think that's where a lot of because it's like a lot of women have a father wound, a lot of men have a mother wound,
Yeah.
and then like they're looking for something from them, and instead of actually asking themselves, what is this giving them? Because I feel a lot of people are still, males or females, they're still looking for that radical acceptance through
Mhm.
other people instead
Yeah.
of, and I mean, I'm guilty of it too in certain ways, but I've kind of worked through a lot of that. And because I see through my own parents their faults. So I'm just like, oh, well, that makes sense. That's how they grew up. That's why they act that way. But of course, I picked up some of those habits myself. But at the same time, it's like, why is it affecting? So it's how do you change it, I guess, is the key. Because a lot of times people will be like, well, it's this or that. But when I guess what I'm trying to get at, 'cause I'm jumping around too much, is that I'll see people and then I'll see how they're raised, and I'll see them acting that way because they were raised that way. So I'm like, there really isn't like evil associated with this person because they're acting the way they were raised.
Mm.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
taking radical responsibility for self,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Nobody's here to save you. Nobody's here to rescue. You're the one you've been waiting for.
Yeah.
Unconditionally love all of you. And I do believe we're at a point in time for those that are ready. You're going to be shown a lot more that's going from the darkness to be brought up to the light. So it can be transmuted. So we can be more of a light being. So we can vibrate higher. So we can help shift what's going on in the world. And I find, yeah, I mean, my dad passed in a really weird way. He had a car accident, went upside down in a ravine, drove off the road, fell asleep at the wheel. Didn't die from the crash, was upside down in the ravine, crawled in the back seat to sleep for the night so he'd climb out. And I'm sure his last thoughts were, fuck, I wrecked another car. Like, you'd feel it. And he's around even now. So, but you know, it's interesting. It did take some effort on my part because he was an asshole. My dad was a complete asshole raising me. But I look at, well, how was he raised? What were his beliefs? Right? And you can see, and he used to talk a lot about the government and this and that, because I'm in Canada. And now I understand why. He was even a rebel back then, per se, right? And so it's just so interesting to observe, but he was blaming external circumstances again. So like if anything, look at, why does that bother me so much? What do I need to look at within me? Yeah.
Interesting. So if we, because I've heard it said, I think it may have been Bashar said it, and I like some of his stuff. Some of his stuff makes a lot of sense to me. But he said that things could be happening in the world around us, but because our focus or our energy is not invested in those things, they can still happen but not affect us. So it's almost like we're looking at them through a window and that in another house, and even though that house, the things are happening there and it's affecting seemingly everyone around you, it's not affecting you. And that kind of made sense, because a lot of the well, sometimes things are happening and I think, well, that doesn't bother me. But I mean, trying to explain why and how that works, I don't know, but I mean, maybe you have an explanation. But I think, well, I just know that it sort of happens.
I think it's when you have the spiritual IQ, so to speak, to be able to get out of the minutia of things that keeps everyone in those lower, the goal is to keep everyone controllable, so into the lower vibrations of themselves, right? And as you heal yourself and you come up in your energy center, chakras, whatever you choose to call, and you shine your light brighter and brighter, all of a sudden these things just, it's out of my control. Hey, it's on the screen. I'm not there. I don't know if that's actually for fact happening. So why am I going to give my energy to it? Right? So it's just being that really cautiously about what we consume. And as Michelle says, you know, you master you, get to know you. Yeah. Carolyn's enjoying the open discussion. Carolyn's one of my admins. So thank you, Carolyn. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Carolyn. Here's a question. Don't know where it popped in from, but The Simpsons, and you know how they somehow manage to predict the future sometimes.
Yes.
What's all that about? How does that work?
I think it's all pre-programming. You have to remember how easy it is from the time the TV came in, from the 3-letter agencies that are all created that have been, MK Ultra, we know how to do this, and this is how we get cognitive dissidence, and this is how we get them to divide, so that, you know, those that cave in are doing it for safety, for the greater good of all. There's all of these things, these psyops that are showing, and combine that with astrology. And there's specific dates in astrology that are quite magical for specific things to occur. And so I just think it's a beautiful lineup. Are they time travelers? I don't know. Who's tapping in that's writing that stuff, that knows this timeline so damn well that they're they're creating it, right? Or they've gone
Yeah.
ahead and they're pulling information back. I look at Avatar, I'm like, oh, wow, Avatar's a more real descriptive of what's going on here. Well, they were all doing ayahuasca. Well, that makes sense. So they were shown, right? And to create that world and have the wars. Yeah.
Because there's
I
Project
think-
Looking Glass, isn't there? Sorry, Thomas. You go on, brother.
Well, I don't think it was Bashar, maybe it was someone else, but they were saying that all things happen, all time frames are happening at one point.
Yeah. It's
So
vibrations.
everything's like working, even alternate realities. Like I don't know, maybe it's all timelines or everything that's happened in our timeline is still happening at the same
Yes.
point.
Yes.
So it's understanding that too. It creates a paradox because I've had to do certain things by going back in time and fixing them. But I can't mess with like the central timeline. I have to like kind of finagle my way around something and to shift it. There was one guy, he had taken a Masonic oath. I think it was a 33rd degree Mason, and something had attached to him. I think it was a blood oath. And I had to remove the entity from attaching or getting near him, but I couldn't mess with the actual timeline. It took a lot of energy to do this. It almost knocked me out. But I was like, how do I fix this problem without messing up what actually happened? And it just came to me. It was like, do it this way. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So I just pushed it out and I was like, problem solved.
Did you
But I
shift your
couldn't actually-
vibration?
Do what?
You were shifting your vibration while you were doing it, right?
Not really sure. I saw the entity come in and I was like, no, and just like pushed it out. Like, nope, can't attach. Rewritten that. But I couldn't actually change the decision he had made. Like, it could change the energy of it. But if that makes sense, yeah. So
Absolutely, because that decision was his to correct. So
Yeah.
I think it's a vibration shift, right?
yeah.
So you just have to shift your vibration. This is why I think we're all, I mean, for one, I'm mastering. All right, what else I'm not going on a healing wheel. And yes, I did the plant medicine and I don't do it anymore right now. It can be very beneficial for getting out of your head and more connected with your body, embodying it. But what else do I need to look at from the darkness? And it's funny, I was burning some, you're supposed to keep things for 7 years for the government. So I was burning a bunch of papers that I could burn. But as I'm burning those papers for Powell Painting, all this information's coming in about past clients and things that happened. And I'm like, oh, what a beautiful opportunity. We're just going to let this all go and burn it all at once. And so it's amazing when things come up. Are you willing to look at it from a new perspective? And so for the timeline thing, I think you were shifting vibration. That's what I was getting. So you're shifting your vibration to go in there and fix something, whereas we can do it ourselves by just having that memory, shifting the energy around that, and it clears it from our initial and immediate field. That's kind of why I was segueing that in. Go ahead.
Yeah. How do you meant plant medicine? One thing I've been very interested in, I've been hearing about for years and years is ibogaine. These people that they get on heroin, cigarettes, whatever, and they take one dose of this stuff, and they are like, it's usually medically supervised now. And of course,
it has to be, unless you're microdosing. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're literally off of it the next day.
Yeah.
And they have these profound like realizations. I've done DMT. I've mentioned that before, and I had some profound realizations. It's like only 15 minutes, so. But the point of it is that with the ibogaine, it interests me because I'm like, okay, how can someone be on something for like 5-10 years, take it one time, and then they're completely off of it?
It's receptors in the brain.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you shift, so you do enough healing. I've done microdosing of ibogaine. I haven't done a full, not been called to. I do have a friend of mine, Tony, who serves DMT. He's down in Phoenix and will be at Sedona. So, but he serves Chenga. So that's a quick dip in and out of DMT. It's about an hour and you're kind of back to, you don't feel like there's a cost to all plant medicine, right? There's a recovery cost per se. And so with the ibogaine, and he's done it a couple times, It's Ibogaine. It comes from a tree in Africa, if I'm right. And so there's different levels. There's the root, there's the bark. So depending on what you take, but it is medically supervised, and you're usually in there. It's usually a 24-hour thing. And so I trust that those getting off of something, they go to the root of the issue that caused the addiction in the first place. And when you shift that energy and you have a realization, an immediate awakening around it, it's like, oh, what the fuck was that? I don't need that anymore. Stop playing the victim and yeah. So I think it's a way of, especially those that are so addicted that you can't do any inner work when you're in that loop.
Yeah.
But and you take that time for yourself, and there's a lot of people that it's really helped. I do believe it'll be one of the, it's working now. So yeah, I do believe if it's the right person and you douse your body and you ask if it's right for you, yeah, it can help.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that before. It's kind of just basically just changing your mind, isn't it? And having the conviction in changing your mind.
In a way, I think it's new neuroplasticity, right? You're correcting neural pathways. You're creating new ones that override the old ones. That's what I was just shown.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because when I did DMT, Jimmy, it was like, I mentioned it before in the podcast, but the quick explanations, 15 minutes in and out. And a voice spoke to me. It was like this walls turned into Mayan ruins. I was in my car late at night at a truck stop, turned into Mayan ruins. This voice talked to me. It's like, you see everything in your car, everything that's going wrong in your life. You manifested this. And it's just totally neutral voice. It was like, if you want to change things, manifest something else. It's essentially all it told me. Like, you manifested all these problems you're having. Everything is good, everything is bad. You did it. So change it.
Take responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you change it? Let's talk about that, because for me, the change always begins with me. So somebody's talking about, I need to stop vaping. So I've been, working with around sugar, right? And so I have a 19-year-old kid. There's baking in the house. There's right. And we might have gone off the rails slightly over Christmas, right? And I'll take responsibility for that. But I have to refrain my brain. Right? I have to, so every time I want that, drink some more water, go for a little walk, I reroute myself. Or if I'm trying to do a longer fast, I've just got to, no, we're not doing that. We're doing this. So you really take control of yourself and your brain. And I find finding a hobby, finding something else to do, chewing gum, I'm not going to say is all, the end all be all, but it can help. And there's some really interesting gums out there right now around even dental health. So I'll leave that one there. Or if you're craving that, putting like an essential oil on your tongue, or putting some frankincense on the roof of your mouth or something. So redoing the habit. And Carolyn's asking, what's the difference between manifesting and commanding? Well, commanding is generally around an action, and manifesting is so you're starting with a command. The manifestation is the action coming from that command. Hopefully that helps, in my opinion.
Excellent. Right. I've got another question.
I have one more question. Thomas, are you thinking about doing Ibogaine?
Yes.
Okay. I can direct you. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely. Because I was supposed to ask him.
You're fine. I was just curious. Going back to Trump.
Awesome. Merry-go-round keeps going around. You can always jump on and jump off again. No problem.
Because obviously he seems to be someone who either people love or people hate. There are obviously some people who are indifferent towards him. But do you think that he is of the light or of the dark, or of both, or neither, or what?
I believe everyone's both in a way, right? Yeah. I right now, what I've been witnessing for some time is, I don't think we really see the real Trump is even on this plane anymore. There's several actors that appear to look like Trump, that, are sounding like Trump. I know
Yes.
over a few years there was a lot of videos coming out in the same place, same situation. The whole setup was the same. It was like a stage, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So there's these recordings going out. I think he's here to expose corruption, but then what's the new energy behind that? Like I look at it like, okay, so they're taking away the CBD. Let's talk about the money, because that seems to be an important one. They're taking away the CBDC, right? The government's, that's not going to happen. But crypto's still coming in. And crypto's still coming in stronger and stronger and stronger. I'm still questioning some of that, because I'm like, okay, so you all rejected vaccine passports per se, right? You all learned the truth about that. Why do we suddenly trust everything being digital? Everything is recorded. Everything you do is recorded, which means if it can be seen, it can be turned off. It can be stopped. So I just question everything. I'm like, I really rather not have to deal with any system. Can we just go back to bartering, please? Because that was so much simpler. I've got this gift, and what have you got? Oh yeah, we align. Let's exchange. Like, it just makes so much more sense in so many ways. So we'll see what comes up next. So I just observe. I'm not judging any of it. I'm just like, a lot of truth is coming out. I think even truth about, Trump will come out as well. Not that it already hasn't in some ways. I mean, I've seen videos that he died in some plane crash. So who knows what timeline we're playing on with this? Yeah. Who knows?
I mean, for me, it's glorious chaos. That's just me. So I like to see things shifting and changing.
Yeah, bring it on.
I think it's happening a little too fast. I think that's why people are going crazy. But I'm like, if you do this in a week or two, like, dear God, what's going to happen in a year? But you have to give it time to shake out. That's what I have to tell. Like, this is what I say to myself. I'm like, give it like a month or two, 3 months, see what happens.
By spring equinox, I think we see things quite differently. That's what I keep
and it's like,
getting.
let it go, because people, they inherently hate change. Like, just people hate that word. They want everything to stay the way it stays. But like, whether it's all these sexual predators being arrested, and then you have the other side of children being deported too. But when I listen to other creators that are from Mexico or this other country, they fixed whatever the situation was. But from Mexico, they're like, we don't want the criminals back. Like, we don't want all these people murderers.
But do you know that to be true, or does it look like it could be a whole movie in itself?
Well, who knows? That's the whole thing.
Witnessing. We're not at the border witnessing.
Yeah.
So I wonder how much of this is just like a show.
Yeah, and that's part of it. It's like, even with the news, it's like, are you being lied to? Are you not being lied to? Is it to get a reaction? Is it to feed another energetic system by those emotions? Because we know there are other, aliens and other things that feed off these energies. So it's like, if you make people emotional, will they, it's like, even at concerts, I remember, Jimmy, I don't know if you ever saw this on TikTok, but Travis Scott had this concert, and they actually filmed this active being, like, and people died there, and it was like energy harvesting.
Yeah.
So it's like, is that what they're doing to the human population? Is energy harvesting, getting them to react?
Well, of course. This whole realm is run on energy. In reality, we're the ones running it. That's why, nobody realizes how important your energy is. Manage your energy.
Yeah.
Claim your power back. The more, this is all the concerts, even we were talking about the Colosseums. I just saw a video this morning with a guy standing in the middle of a Colosseum somewhere, and there's a plate, and he's stomping on it, and the reverberation was insane from one person. And he was clapping, and the reverberation was crazy. And I was like, imagine that filled with people and how much energy that is. Or if you're witnessing, and there's another story about John Gray, who is the relationship coach, right? He was one of those, and he would do live events, and he started having dreams that he knew were not his dreams. What is going on? This is weird. Well,
Mm.
it turns out as he spoke with some of the people attending, they're their dreams, and he's picking up on it because they're all sending him energy as he's speaking on stage. So we put up roses, buckets of
Mm.
roses between him and the attendees. And the roses closest to the attendees would all wilt. And then people would rotate it. The roses would come back up. The new ones would wilt because roses hold the highest vibration. Now, I'm not
Mm.
saying, go cut a bunch of roses, but maybe you bring in rose bushes. But quite interesting, the more energy, the more so Trump is collecting a lot of energy right now, good or bad. You hate him, you're still giving him energy. You love him, you're still giving him energy. Yeah.
Mm.
Energy doesn't discern. It doesn't discriminate. It's just energy.
Yeah. It's kind of like he's playing the role perfectly because he's dividing people. He's providing that focal point to harvest the energy.
He's what's the conductor?
Strong.
He's a conductor.
Yeah, it's kind of like he's the purveyor of, or the instigator of strong emotions, because there hasn't been anyone who's stirred up such strong emotional reactions as him for quite a while, I imagine. But I mean, we don't know the full history of everything, but yeah, I do look at it and I think, but you're right. I mean, you hear about people. It never really clicked before because we're told that we go to a concert or a public place or what have you, an event, and we feel we're if you feel drained of energy, is because you're empathic and you're picking up people's energy and stuff like that. But that may be just the fact that you are being drained of energy because it's
I've had it happen to me.
You're meant to.
Any game. Go ahead, Thomas.
I had that happen. There was a channeler when I was like 34, and I don't know what she did. She put us in a state. She was channeling. She was pregnant. All this was wrong, and basically, I went into some kind of trance state. But when I came out, I felt like dead, just totally depleted. I slammed 2 monsters because I was crazy, but it didn't do anything to me. And I was like, this isn't good. And I know people that know her even now, but the point of it is that it's just, I was like, oh, okay, I caught that one, not going to happen again. But that's the thing, is I don't know if it's always controllable, because even I mentioned Savannah before with the acupuncturist that I saw who was basically an exorcist and shifted people's realities. I understood at some point that, and she knows nothing about New Age. Everything to her is 15th century Oriental medicine. But she was harvesting all this energy and doing something with it. And now some people would say that was evil or bad. I wouldn't, because she was changing people's lives and she had to do something with that energy. So whether she alchemized it into something else or whatever. But I mean, she was slammed with people. That's how good she was. I mean, it was like booked solid. And you have to wait an hour to even get in. But she would just be shifting all this stuff. But I was like, she's alchemizing it. She's using this negative energy and changing it, that she's pulling out of people. Some people would say that's evil, but that's their perspective. I would see that with my former teacher, Rossi. It was like, she was a master of the dark. I didn't figure this out for years before she was a master of the light. So no one knew that, but it made so much sense how she could battle the dark so well. Yeah.
Because if you master your own darkness, what else is there to fight? You got to move into the light. Yeah. And it's funny because I have many acupuncturists I know that I have worked with, and absolutely. And now I'm a little more of an opinion that I don't really want holes in my body. I want my body to stay. Let's just keep that skin sealed up. It's like my whole family, all of the women have had their gallbladders out, which generally is around anger, right? Frustration. And dinner, Tanya, when are you getting your gallbladder out? I'm like, what? No, It's not just, you guys don't get this. No, nothing's coming out of this body unless it's an emergency, because I actually am very embodied and respect my body and I work through my shit. So whatever you can alchemize that is the dark or the frustration, then you get to come into light. But there's something to be said about, you know, like somebody else is going in for an operation, or why are they all of a sudden doing nothing but C-sections? Like, you start to think about these things, right? Think about what that does to the body, what that does to the child. Everything is energy, right? So as you were saying, so yeah, I think we're in for some entertaining times, and a beautiful, I can see the other side of where I choose to go. So focus on what you do want, not what's happening right now. So what can you and make those small changes to get there. And as Michelle said, master yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to finish it, I think. We'll just pass the hour. So yeah, that was a great line to finish. Thank you, Tanya. Yeah, do you want to just remind us where you edited it as well. But yeah, do you want to just remind us where we can find you? And
absolutely. You just have to put in my full name, TANJA POWELL. Never hidden my name. You find out all about me. But I'm definitely at adventuresforconnection.com is the main place to find and connect. Or you can connect by email. And then of course that'll have all the links for all of the other things. Yeah.
Marvelous. Thomas, got anything coming up Sunday?
How to communicate with your spirit guides this Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's 2-hour Zoom.
Beautiful.
And all my normal sessions are on my website.
Beautiful.
Right.
What about you, Jimmy?
I haven't got anything at the moment. I'm just doing frequency stuff. That's all.
When are you gonna start teaching?
Don't say it that way. I'm playing with energy all the time. I'm having a great time over here playing with energy on my guitar and on my vibrations, which are all posted across social media as well. Yeah, speak about yourself. Come on, get yourself out there a little more.
Yeah, my guy's saying, when are you gonna start teaching, Jimmy?
Right?
Teaching. Oh, I just do the frequencies and let people teach themselves.
Come on.
I'm good. But no, thank you, Tanya. It's been a pleasure as always.
You're welcome.
Thank you everyone for watching.
Great to be here with you guys.
Thank you.
Everyone. Ada and Wardra and Jan and everyone, Michelle, obviously. Yeah, thank you everyone for watching. And Dina, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Au revoir.